Now, Helston's streets have been packed today for the annual Flora Day celebrations. The festival marks the passing of winter and the arrival of spring, with hundreds of dancers taking part throughout the day. Tamsin Melville was there.
7 a.m. and the beat of the big bass drum marks an ancient festival swinging into action once more. Helston Flora Day sees hundreds of dancers of all ages taking to the streets, accompanied by the town band.
Today we have to get 1,000 school children, 400 midday dancers and 200 7 and 5 o'clock dancers through the streets of Helston on a lovely hot summer's day with a huge crowd, and it's wonderful.
Which dance were you in?
Oh, it's part of the hal-an-tow.
And just tell me what that is.
It's a really old traditional dance, and it wakes up the whole of Helston.
This year has the largest number of dancers taking part, with 1,100 involved in the children's dance.
I absolutely love it, and you can definitely see more people that are happier today than any other.
And 190 couples were in the midday dance. To be in the leading 4 is a real honour.
Well, you just get a letter in your letterbox. And...
I know, yeah. So obviously, like we've danced all through school, as adults, probably in the 7 and 5 midday, and yeah, just all of a sudden a letter drops in January and it just asks you to lead, and you're kind of like, all right, a little bit blown away, but yeah, amazing feeling.
There is a selection process. You've got to have danced a number of times. You've got to, of course, be Helston born.
As soon as you get that letter through the door back in January, dancing around the house with excitement, and then just want to secrecy until it all comes out in March, and then, yeah, you can celebrate with everybody.
Couples dance in and out of houses and shops to drive out the darkness of winter and bring in the light of spring.
Usually dance for having a year off this year, but I don't just the number of people here gives a great sense of pride and, proud of where I live.
It's just a day that makes you proud to be Cornish, because it's tradition, and the Helston people fight fiercely to keep their tradition, and as you can see, it's a glorious day, draws lots of crowds, and people feel passionate about it.
Tamsin Melville, BBC Spotlight, Helston.